Welcome to Mind Shifters Radio on Nedl. I'm Tim Hayes, your host for the first hour. And today is a Thursday, December 19th, 2024. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or you find us on the archives. Because as usual, we're going to spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered in my many years of doing therapy with people. And I call them accessible because they're available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Rice on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet, and it's a tool I've been using to great effect for 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Just click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one where people have called in and been stepped through that worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to those even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your App Store and type in the three words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And if you choose to do that before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it'll let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. Secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we'd appreciate you doing so. If you desire to contact us live, you can download the Nedl app from your app store. That's Nedl, and it's an app for live radio. And once you're in, you can tell the app you want to talk or make a comment, and it'll let you do that. If you're listening after the fact in the archives, you can always send us an email. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org. Or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And when we get a question or a comment from you, we'll address it on the internet show. And then, as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred, so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback. And we greatly appreciate whenever anybody does that, because it makes it infinitely easier for us to live into our intention with this work. The intention we have with this work is to be of service, and that's just loads and loads easier to do when we know how these things are landing for you. So please feel free to send an email or indicate on the app that you have a comment or a question, and we will address this. the best of our ability. You know, one of the things that happened yesterday is we finished the second read-through of The Way of Mastery with commentary, going through the entire book, all 35 lessons. It's taken the better part of a year. And we've had some side, I'll say, you know, pathways we've taken. We've brought in other books, and we've done some cross comparisons about different teachings. The most recent one that we've been weaving in together with The Way of Mastery is the book Butterflies Are Free to Fly, written by Stephen Davis, and available absolutely free on the internet. Either if you have Kindle, it's a free download for Kindle, or if you just want to get the PDF file through the internet and read it that way. And as I mentioned, there have been a number of different segments at the end of his book, and I've skipped over some of them that are less relevant for our work. And he's in a section here at the end where he's posing questions that he's gotten from different people and or questions that he's had for himself, and the answers that he's come to over time on his spiritual journey. Again, I think it's useful to say he's putting himself out there not as a guru, not as your leader, not someone you should follow, but simply another seeker of some way of making sense of life that ends up helping him have an experience that he prefers. And so one of these questions that he poses is about trust. And as I read it, I thought this could be useful for us, because I get a lot of people who ask me about this. You mean I should just trust what you're saying? If I get a new patient in, I literally had one of these in my office yesterday. A gentleman was having only his third or fourth session, and as I was trying to present to him the concept about the value in canceling goals and the mental short version of the reality management worksheet, he said, well, where can I research this? Where are the studies that prove that this is right? And my response to him was, this isn't the way that works. I don't want you to read a bunch of studies that tell you this is the truth, because I've been at this long enough that I've read studies by experts and books on parenting that said things like, don't hug your kids, you'll ruin them. You know, experts that say, if you spare the rod, you spoil the child, so beat your kids on a regular basis. And these were experts at the time. These were people that were revered with doctorates and with a clinical practice and with a following of people that absolutely believed this is the way to deal with things. And later, time and life and other research proved them to be wrong. One of my things that I talk about with people is communication skills. And I mentioned that Dr. Michael Rice has the responsibility communication tool, and how it is so similar to Harville Hendricks' Imago dialogue, and it's so similar to Robert Bolton's reflective listening, and it's so similar to the nonviolent communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Well, one of those is from the book Getting the Love You Want by Harville Hendricks. And a very popular book, the Imago dialogue, very popular in therapy. It had its day, and at the 20-year mark, you know, they said, this book is still so popular and been reprinted so many times, let's do a revision. And for the 20th year, they said, now, we've kept a lot of stuff the way it was, but some of the things we've changed because we've learned over time that they weren't productive. And one of those things they changed was an exercise that they would have couples do. And I won't go into what the exercise was, but it basically had to do with just telling your partner everything that you don't like about him or her. And the partner is not allowed to refute anything. They're just, basically saying, thank you. Thanks for sharing. And in the intro to that book, he said, you might notice that we took that exercise out because the research over time indicated this just made relationships worse. But for how many years was it out there as one of the valuable exercises in the book, Getting the Love You Want? So yesterday I was approaching this patient with the perspective of, please just observe this for yourself. Please just give it a try in these minor situations in your life and see the result. Don't look to some outside expert telling you you should do this or that. Here's a very simple thing you can do whenever you're upset. Take a breath, turn the focus inside, and ask yourself, what goal am I holding right now that's not getting met? And just take a chance that it's safe to cancel the thought and cancel the goal and ask to be shown another way to look at this situation. Well, the same kind of thing has happened throughout my career with trust. People say, well, you mean I should just trust that everything's going to work out fine? I should trust that God, and I usually say, no, it's not about trust. It's about living your life. The approach that I recommend is about living your life with direct observation. Keep your eyes open. Understand that whenever you're upset, you're probably not seeing things accurately. This is why, trial attorneys try to get the witness for the opposing side to be upset or scared or angry at them because they know that's when they make mistakes. So if you're in an upset or an angry or a scared space, probably the best thing for you to do is learn how to sort that out in a way that you calm down before you make any serious decisions, because you're probably not perceiving things accurately. So on the matter of trust, one of these areas where it's a hot button topic for a lot of people I work with, Stephen Davis says, here's a question that he gets. The question is it true that L. Ron Hubbard once said, on the day when we can fully trust each other, there will be peace on earth? Is that true, that there will be peace on earth when we fully trust each other? And Stephen, who used to work with L. Ron Hubbard and his teachings, says, no, that's not true. Because the way L. Ron Hubbard said it, it makes it sound like we should be working to learn to trust each other. And if we could succeed at trusting each other, we'd have peace on earth. And Stephen says that's just another incorrect twist to the truth that happens inside the movie theater. It's just another of the many beliefs we're told to line up behind in our lives, whether it's from our government or our religious leaders or our spiritual teachers. Stephen says, the intentional community that I have been associated with for over 17 years has spent most of that time trying to learn to trust each other. And they've been using various techniques and processes such as the forum. And I can say that they've made some progress and that their community is perhaps more, quote, peaceful, close quotes, than other places that I have lived. And yet I can't say that they've gone very far. Trusting each other, however, is not a goal to be worked for. It's a byproduct. Like Jed McKenna talked about when he was talking about the concept of non-attachment. It's something that happens as a result of something else. And then Stephen goes on and says, the only thing that anyone ever has to trust is their infinite I. If you trust your infinite I, if you trust the flow of life, if you trust your personal God, whatever you want to call it, then you automatically trust everyone and everything in your holographic experiences, since it's your infinite I that creates them all for you, right down to the smallest detail. If you trust your infinite I and someone appears in your hologram, you know how to trust them too. You trust them to read the movie script that's written by your infinite I, and you trust them to read it word for word since they're only there at the request of your infinite I. He says, in fact, it's futile to spend time trying to trust each other when there's always the possibility in the back of your mind that someone is, quote, out there, close quotes, who could do something, quote, bad to you, close quotes. If you fully trust your infinite I, you know that's simply not possible. Therefore, it would be more accurate to say, on the day when you can fully trust your infinite I, you will experience peace on earth. And Stephen goes on to say, yes, individual peace is possible, regardless of what is going on that appears to be, quote, out there, close quotes, in your hologram. In fact, individual peace is the only thing you have any control over through your free will, which you can use to react and respond to your holographic experiences. War and violence may be raging all around you, and you can still be at peace and in peace within you because you fully trust your infinite I and the experiences it's creating for you. We could also say on a larger scale that, quote, on the day when we all can fully trust our infinite eyes, we will experience peace on earth, close quotes. And yet, that will only happen one player at a time. Each player unilaterally deciding to trust his or her own infinite I. As I said in chapter 18, it's not something that comes very easily at first. We've spent many years not trusting our infinite I and blaming it and things outside of us for our condition in life and resisting the experiences that life or our infinite I has created for us. And it can take time to change that conditioned pattern within us. However, if you use Robert's process or Dr. Michael Rice's reality management worksheet and or spiritual autolysis or the Mind Shifter targeted journaling tool, or Diedrich Wolzak's 6 Steps to Forgiveness or Freedom tool, and you let go of your judgments, you let go of your beliefs, you let go of your opinions, you let go of your fears, and eventually the layers of ego that want you to think that you are actually driving the bus, that you are actually creating your life. Then you'll soon know with certainty that your infinite I can be trusted. In fact, it is the only thing you ever need to trust, and all else follows. He brings up a quote from the Bible which says, "Therefore take no thought, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewithal shall we be clothed? For your heavenly Father knoweth that you have need of all these things. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you." Now that's a quote from the King James Version of the Bible. And Guy Finley has a way of parsing this out, looking at the ancient Aramaic and the Latin and the Greek and coming back and saying, you know, people read that and think, if I do what I think the Bible's telling me to do or what I think God wants me to do, then I'm going to get all this good stuff. And Guy Finley says, you know, this quote is not about accumulating anything, acquiring anything. A different way to say this from the original texts is to say, if you love above all things the rule of divine life, which is another way of saying, if you trust above everything else, whatever your infinite I brings you as a life experience, then you see its completely equitable or balanced character. And then all of these things that you have as cravings and desires in your life shall be placed in a passive position within you. It's not about acquiring anything, it's about being in that bliss state or that peace that passes all understanding each moment with whatever life brings you. So he paraphrases that here into saying, focus on trusting your infinite I and know that your infinite I will take care of all the rest. And Stephen goes on and says, but are you actually saying that I really don't have to do anything? I mean, that I'm just supposed to sit back and trust that my infinite I will feed me and clothe my family and keep a roof over our heads and take care of all of our needs? Isn't that a tad bit irresponsible? And Stephen says, well, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. And no, it's not irresponsible at all. Because calling it irresponsible would be a judgment and a belief. And again, that's something that's been learned from our parents or our culture. After all, who else can create the hologram with the food and the clothes and the family that you need and the roof over their heads other than your infinite I? And yet, Stephen says, I want to make sure that we're putting the emphasis on the right word. Do I really not have to do anything at all? Have to is the key word here. All you have to do is be the player and experience the holographic universe your infinite I creates for you. Nothing else. This is right in line with the way of mastery, where there's an entire lesson that says you need do nothing. Now, a lot of times when the Western trained mind reaches that lesson in the way of mastery and other spiritual teachings, the Western mind goes into conniptions and says, this is ridiculous. Are you telling me I should just sit like a bump on a log and never get off the couch? And that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is the recognition that you're always choosing. You're choosing to go to work, or you're choosing to not go to work. You're choosing to pay your bills or not pay your bills. You're choosing the interpretations of things that generate anger in you, or you're choosing the interpretation of things that are generating fear in you. You don't have to be fearful if somebody bigger than you comes at you screaming in anger. You can generate fear, but you don't have to. You don't have to pay your bills. Certainly, there will be consequences if you choose not to, and yet many people don't pay their bills on a regular basis or at all. Some of them go bankrupt multiple times. So the lessons from the way of mastery to what Stephen is talking about here again show us parallels. And Stephen goes on to write, I don't want to give the impression that in the second half of your life in your cocoon that you do nothing and you sit around all day, because for most of us that would be boring. However, if it brings you total joy, then yeah, go ahead and do it. He says, in fact, life in the cocoon is more full and more interesting and more active than ever. However, instead of trying to make something happen or having all of these goals and agendas and plans and objectives, you simply start interacting with and responding moment by moment to the present circumstances that are created by your infinite I. In this second half of the game, the only way you can live is in what Robert Scheinfeld calls reactive mode, what I would call the observing and reacting mode. I'm not believing in this or that, I'm observing what's actually unfolding. I've dismantled the shoulds and the have tos and the should nots. Stephen goes on and says, by using the word reactive here, I also don't want to imply that you don't make any decisions. You do make decisions. And sometimes even decisions that involve the future, like scheduling to give a seminar or agreeing on a date for a child's wedding. And when a holographic experience appears in our reality, we're completely free to act on it, to take whatever action we feel is appropriate and necessary in that moment. That's a lot different than trying to, quote, make something happen, close quotes, or believing that I simply must do something in order to have a certain kind of life. An infinite I probably has a lot of interesting experiences planned for its player, especially in the second half of this game that we're calling the human game. If we would simply stop trying to create our own lives and trust our infinite I to bring us a life that we could only dream of, and of course that's a life that we are not capable of creating by ourselves. So you're listening to me read this book, and I assume it's because you aren't totally happy with the way things are in your life. I also assume that you've been trying to be the bus driver. Why not give your infinite I a chance to drive the bus? Really trust it. Let go and give it a chance. Why not? You can start by experimenting with the 3 exercises that are outlined in a previous chapter. Doing only what brings you joy for 24 hours. Spend a whole day doing only those things that bring you joy. And then spend another 24 hours not trying to make anything happen, just allowing things to happen. And then spend another 24 hours saying yes to everything that appears in your hologram. By the end of those 3 days, I have full confidence that you'll have enough direct experience that your infinite I can be trusted. And you may start exercising that trust more and more. So from Stephen's perspective, all trust begins with trusting your own infinite I. Trusting that, as Guy Finley says, the lessons you need to learn in life ride into your life on the back of the events that you don't want. And as a corollary to that, the importance of the lessons that are coming at you in life are directly proportional to how much you do not want the life event that's bringing that lesson. So the more you don't want an experience, the more valuable the life lesson is for you in that experience. And as Guy Finley says, resistance to the event loses you the lesson. Resistance is the lesson stealer. If I do not openly, freely, in a flow, in an allowing, surrendering state, accept what's happening in my life, I lose the lesson. I can't learn the lesson if I'm resisting the event. Which is why when we talk about this, we say, hey, it's a wonderful idea to watch for the earliest warning signs of upset or tension within me, and then just start asking myself, you know, I wonder how this situation that's gone in a different direction than I wanted it to today, how this situation is going to turn out better than I could have ever have desired or planned. Or I might ask myself, I wonder how this situation is going to lead to a lesson I need to learn to move to the next level in my life. Or I might ask myself, I wonder how this situation is going to get me introduced to people I wouldn't have met any other way. People for whom I can be a blessing in their life or who might end up being a blessing in mine. And if I'm willing to approach life in that perspective, that allowing, accepting, trusting, embracing, surrendering to life and asking to be taught by it, I'm going to get an entirely different experience than if I approach life thinking I know what's supposed to be happening here. And it's not going right because it didn't pan out the way I thought the day should go. So again, as I take a breather here, halfway through our first hour, I just want to remind anybody listening that I welcome comments, calls. I do not view them as interruptions. I view them as additions to the show. Even if it seems like I'm in the middle of reading something or a monologue, please feel free to download the Nedl app and press the appropriate buttons that allow you to put a hand up and let me know you'd like to have a comment or a question. As I say in the intro, that makes it far easier for us to be of service, and that is the intention with this work. So continuing and reading from the book Butterflies Are Free to Fly, the next lesson that I thought was relevant is the questions he has been answering about money. And here chapter 30 in the book says, I get the question that asks me, how do you make money? You must be rich having all these experiences that you talked about, whether it's sailing or traveling around Europe or scuba diving. And his answer is, as I write these words, I have exactly $20 to my name in total assets. He says, I don't think that qualifies me for being rich. And yet, I've already said that I never worry about money at all, which is one of the reasons I can give this book away for free on the internet. It's more than that, really. It's that I have an unlimited supply of money to have whatever holographic experience comes up for me in each moment. And so do you, although you don't realize it yet. I don't, quote, make money, close quotes. He says, no one makes money. We only think we do. That's part of the illusion that we've been taught inside the movie theater. He goes on and he says, I realize that money is one of the biggest issues. For most people, especially in that first half of our human game, they can't get enough of it, they can't keep what they've got, and they've tried everything to change that situation with very little success. What's worse than that, actually, is that they've been promised that there is some kind of a secret to attracting money, but they follow the steps religiously and then it doesn't work. And then they blame themselves for not doing the magic just right. As one student told me, I've tried to use the movie The Secret and the law of attraction and other self-help techniques to manifest money, but they don't work. I'm still broke, so there must be something wrong with me, or I must be doing something wrong. Stephen writes, here's the real secret. The problem is not the person, not you. It's the magic that doesn't work for most of the time for most people. It's that we've developed a false knowledge about money and where it comes from while we're inside the movie theater, while we're still believing what the culture teaches us. It's a false knowledge about money and where it comes from that is at the root of this problem. And it might just be time for us to find out how money really works in a holographic universe. He says, as I was doing my holographic universe workshops in Europe, I started collecting different beliefs that the participants had about money. And the parallels to what you're going to hear here parallel Dr. Michael Rice's teachings on creating consciously in that lecture. And a lecture that he gave once down in Florida titled, Are you still waiting for your ship to come in? Which one did you send out? So here are some of the major thoughts or beliefs about money that Stephen Davis collected while he was doing his workshops on the holographic universe, all through Europe. Statements like, I have to earn money, or I have to work for money, or I can't afford everything I want, or there's a limited supply of money available to me, or every time I spend money, my supply of money decreases, or nothing I really want is free, or if I want more money, I have to work harder or smarter or deliver more value, or I've got to have a plan to make money and then invest it wisely and build wealth over time. Or if I have money, I have to protect it or I could lose it. Or I have to be responsible with my money. Or it must be fully, totally, and truly, I must be fully, totally, and truly committed to making money. Or there's never enough money. Or there's something dirty about money and those who have a lot of it. Or money is the root of all evil. Or the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Or more money is better. Or money doesn't grow on trees. Or some have the gift of making money and others don't. Or money doesn't come easy. Or you can have money, but you can't be spiritual if you have money. Or money comes from out there and you have to go out there and get it and bring it in here to you. So then Stephen asks, how many of these beliefs do you think are true? All of them? Half of them? A few of them? My favorite one on this list is that money doesn't grow on trees. I used to hear that a lot when I was young, and it always puzzled me because it does grow on trees. Money is made of paper, and paper is made of trees, so that one is false. Would it surprise you to know that none of those above statements are true with a capital T? Not one. Not in a holographic universe. They're all beliefs people have about money. These are stories they make up to explain why they think they don't have enough money or can't make more money. Or in many ways, they feel like they're a victim of the money game. So I repeat, all of these beliefs are false in a holographic universe, which should be expected since they were all formed inside the movie theater. They were all taught to people by other people who were taught by people who were taught by other people. It's all made up. Let's take a look at a little closer look at why they're all false. Try to remember that consciousness creates everything from the field of infinite possibilities. And your infinite I is consciousness. Therefore, your infinite I is creating everything you experience in your holographic universe, and you as the player are experiencing it, and that's happening down to the smallest detail. And then there's a picture in the book that shows the infinite I on one side of the field of infinite possibilities, and rays, energy rays, radiating out from the infinite I, hitting the field of infinite possibilities, and then creating on the other side of the field of infinite possibilities what we call our reality, which is this holographic universe he's talking about. And he uses this picture to say the player is on the opposite side of the field from the side on which all things are created by the infinite I. And the way he conceptualizes this, that all power resides in the infinite I, and the player has no power to create anything. The player only has power about how it interprets and responds, either enjoys or pushes away, accepts or fights against what is manifested. So said in another way, he says, everything we have, everything we see, everything we experience has been created for us by our infinite eyes. This is the first and most important concept to understand, especially about money. It's also the most important and most difficult for the ego to accept. The ego would like to think the player could create something, manifest something, make something happen. But it's simply not possible in a holographic universe, since we, the players, are on the other side of the hologram, other side of the field, and we're in the hologram itself. Only an infinite I can create a hologram, and only an infinite I can create money in that hologram. However, if an infinite I chooses certain specific experiences from the field that it wants a player to have, and the only reason an infinite I would create a player is for that player to have experiences, so the infinite I can experience it vicariously, then wouldn't the infinite I also give its player all the tools it needs to have those experiences? Does it make any sense that the infinite I, with infinite resources at its disposal, would want its player to have certain experience and then not give it everything it needs to have that experience, including the money required? Especially since the player has no power to create anything on its own in this model. So the first thing to understand about money is that it is created by your infinite I. And if your infinite I wants you to have a particular holographic experience, it will have to provide all the money you need to have that experience as well. The exception to this, of course, is if your infinite I wants you to experience what it's like to not have any money. However, in that case, it's still providing whatever money you need for that experience, even though, quote, all the money you need, close quotes, might mean, quote, not enough money, close quotes, as far as you're concerned. Now, as a sidebar, as Stephen is working on this, I want to have us think about it's just a model for a model of thought about how the world works that we might use to understand and then to create and craft our responses to the flow of life. And one of the important pieces in this and other deep spiritual traditions is the concept that there are no victims. So I'm not a victim of what my infinite I chooses for me to experience. And if I get cancer, it's not because I did something wrong. If I have physical restrictions early in life, I'm a 5-year-old confined to a wheelchair with a body that doesn't work right. It's not because I, as a 5-year-old, did something wrong. It's just about experience. And we aren't creating the problems that we have. We are choosing how we interpret and respond to these things that happen in our lives. Do we call it a problem? Do we call it a life event? Do we call it a lesson? Do we call it I'm a victim? Do we dive into the victim role? We can do that. We're given the freedom of how to interpret and respond to life events, and we're always exercising that freedom, even when we think we don't have any freedom. Because in all these deep spiritual teachings, the one thing that's, or one of the many things I would say, that cuts across about every deep spiritual tradition that's ever resonated with me is the concept that your mind energy is a creative force and it's always on. And you don't get to choose to turn it off. You just get to choose what you direct it towards. And in this work and in the Way of Mastery and in Course in Miracles and in Diedrich Wolzak's work, we're being asked on a regular basis, we're being invited to choose to direct our mind energy toward the positive interpretations of life and the positive responses. Choose for love over fear, moment to moment. Choose to be asking to be taught by life moment to moment rather than deciding you think you know better than the flow of life. Whether you think that flow of life is being caused by some flow of life, all creative force, something you call God, or something you call infinite I. It doesn't matter to me. Whatever you want to call it. So Stephen goes on here and says, it's true that most players believe that they make money. And they've developed all kinds of beliefs about how that money has been coming into their possession and how it has to be made. Things like working, selling something, getting loans or gifts, inheritance, all these different methods. The truth is, the infinite I is the one who creates the money for its player. But it can only send that money to its player in ways the player thinks it can receive it. This is where the player's beliefs come in. So let's look at that again. If I have a belief that says I have to earn money, I have to work for money, I can't afford everything I want, there's a limited supply of money available to me, and every time I spend money, my supply of money decreases. If I believe nothing I really want is free, if I believe if I want more money, I have to work harder and smarter and longer and deliver more value. If I believe these things, and I absolutely believe they're true, then it puts up a restriction. It's like crimping the hose for the flow of life energy and money, and the infinite I can't send me that because it's against what I believe is going to show up. He says an infinite I could create $1 million in a player's bank account out of thin air, and the player wouldn't think it was theirs. They would think, oh, this is some kind of a mistake. If their beliefs say it can't happen that way, or they only believe money can come these other ways. Stephen tells a story. One woman owed her bank $10,000. One day she got a statement saying her balance was $0. She immediately called the bank, which was very quick to agree with her that it was definitely a mistake. And they sent her a new statement restoring the $10,000 balance. Another woman who understands how money works in a holographic universe, she owed her bank $30,000. When she received a statement that her bank balance was zero, she simply expressed her deepest appreciation to her infinite I and went on with her life. I like to call these beliefs that we have about money stories. A player needs a story to explain how they get the money. The infinite I needs no story to explain its creation of money. Only the player, with the player's limited mind and limited beliefs and limited thinking, needs a story to receive the money. This is exactly how it's supposed to be in the first half of the human game, because requiring a story creates a lot of limitation. And in the first half of the human game, the point is limitation, to experience limitation. If there are only a few ways that you believe you can get money, whether that's earning it or winning it or inheriting it, for example, then there are severe limitations put on how you can get money and how much you can get. The infinite I has no such limitations on how much money it can create for its player. And in the second half of the human game, when a player has made significant progress at dismantling its beliefs and its opinions and its upsets and its trauma energy around money and energy flow, all the stories that we've made up about money start to fall away. Notice that he says here to leave behind all the beliefs. He didn't say, I'm changing the beliefs, my old beliefs for new beliefs. He says, I'm leaving behind beliefs. I'm seeing the lack of value in holding on to a belief. Stephen goes on and says, all of these self-help techniques, all of these, quote, secrets, close quotes, that someone tries to share with you about manifesting more money or more cars or more everything, these are all based on several skewed premises, which is why they don't work for most people most of the time. Because they're just another set of beliefs. So if I substitute one belief for another, I'm still operating through constriction and limitation. For instance, he says, people say they have the power to manifest anything you want. Well, you don't. It's that simple. Despite what your ego might tell you, only your infinite I can manifest something in your holographic experience, not you. People say you can attract money and cars and such into your life by meditating or praying or visualizing them, and then repeating certain affirmations. Well, you can't, at least not on a consistent basis. They say all you have to do is to change your beliefs, like the power of positive thinking. And what's wrong with the power of positive thinking? Again, there's nothing, quote, wrong with it, close quotes. It's perfect for the first half of the human game because it leads to such limitation. First, because it's thinking, which belongs in the first half, while the feeling of things belongs in the second half. And secondly, because the player has no, quote, power, close quotes, to create things from this side of the field of infinite possibilities. So true, a positive thought might be, quote, better, close quotes, than a negative thought, especially if you're in the first half of the human game. However, in the second half, having a positive thought means it's a judgment. And as we've seen, judgments keep us limited. This is why Way of Mastery talks so thoroughly about this in the third lesson. And the Way of Mastery says it very clearly. I learned that the greatest gift I could ever receive would only come to me if I dismantle my thoughts, beliefs, and judgments about you and the world around me, about my brothers and sisters. Because every thought, belief, and judgment, every perception that I create is a limitation, is a shrinking down from this flow of infinite creative energy into a few little bits of data points that I can grasp within my limited conscious logical mind. So Stephen goes on and says, underneath all of our beliefs are judgments. If there was no judgment, there would be no need for a belief and it would cease to exist. When you try to change your beliefs without dismantling the judgment, nothing really changes at all. You're just substituting one belief for another, while the judgment remains intact. If there really were a, quote, secret, close quotes, to manifesting everything we want, it would work for all people who use it all the time. The actual result from all of this self-help is that when it doesn't work, which means for most of the people most of the time, the person feels worse about themselves than when they started. And they start thinking that there's something wrong with them, or that they can't do it quite right, or that they're deficient or defective somehow. The ironic perfection is that that's exactly what every first half technique or religion or theory is designed to do. It's designed to help you feel more limited. So Stephen says, I'm not suggesting that you, quote, change your beliefs, close quotes, at all. I'm suggesting that you start to see your beliefs for what they are. Limiting filters on your perceptions. And then, once you see that, you start leaving them behind altogether. Even in the powerful example that Dr. Bruce Lipton used in his seminar, where people saw one picture of fear with one set of glasses and another picture saying the word love with a different set of glasses, it's still just trading one filter for another. And neither filter allows you to see the whole picture. So, as players in the second half of the human game, we don't need beliefs. We don't need stories. What we need to do now is to see the whole picture. Both the energy of love and creation and expansion and the ways we constrict from it. We can dismantle our judgments of them both, and like Rudyard Kipling says in the poem If, we can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. So we've got a few minutes left for comments or questions. I think that's all I'll end up reading today from the book Butterflies Are Free to Fly and the tie-ins with the Way of Mastery, which we finished reading for the second time yesterday. And I will invite any of our listeners to raise a hand or make a comment and or a suggestion about what book we should go to next or who I should be interviewing. I should mention I did an interview this morning with a young woman psychologist in Spain who is working with an app. It's called MyDry30, MYDRY, the number 30.com. And if you go to that website, if you know anybody who's going to be having a rough time getting through the holidays with all of the alcohol consumption, etc., they might want to check this out. Complete access to the app for 7 days for free, but if they like it and they want to use it, it's 30 days for $30. And it's a very well-designed app based on solid principles related to all the same kind of things that we talk about here without Dr. Michael Rice's worksheet process, but the idea that, some of the quotes on their website are quotes from Carl Jung that Michael Rice would use, like until you make the unconscious conscious, the unconscious material will direct your life and you'll call it fate. And so what they've done here is brought professionals together who use hypnosis and they use meditation and they use knowledge of programmed learning, and they put together a program to help people explore what are the dynamics within the individual that drive them to use alcohol as a numbing agent or a distracting agent. So it's not just, okay, I'm going to grit my teeth and stay away from alcohol for 30 days. It's actually an app to help people do self-exploration. And you can find it in your app store, or you can get access to it and learn more about it at mydry30.com, mydry30.com. And that's just an example of something that somebody ran across and sent to me and said, hey, check this out. Maybe it would be a good person to interview. And I'll interview that person, whether it's for Mind Shifters Radio or the On Your Mind podcast hosted by Journey's Dream. And once again, I just throw it out there. The invitation's wide open. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org. Or you can send a message through your Nedl Studio app as a comment, or you can raise your hand and just talk directly to me. I welcome suggestions about people that I could interview, or books I could read, or podcasts that you listen to that you think are powerful. And they might agree to be interviewed for either the On Your Mind podcast or this Mind Shifters radio show. And if you're here, if you're listening through the Nedl, Nedl, either the studio app or the listening audio app, or you find us in the archives, please let us know how you found us and whether or not what's happening is meeting your needs. I almost recited the call-in number because we're new at Nedl. But again, if you're trying to figure this out, when you go to your app store and you type in the word Nedl, Nedl, with a long E sound, a couple options show up, and the one that allows you to listen to the show is Nedl: AI tuner for live radio. So if you download that app, it will let you listen and call in or